Welcome everyone to the game of the world champion Domaraju Gukesh at the fourth round of the Prague Masters 2026. Gukesh is playing against David Navara, the top player from Czech Republic. Gukesh is currently on 1 point out of 3 with 2 draws and 1 loss, while David Navara is playing a super solid tournament with 1 win and 2 draws. The game begins and Gukesh opens up with pawn to e4 and David responds back with e5. Knight comes out to f3. We have some view that is being blocked here. Knight to c6 and Gukesh quickly plays the Ruy Lopez with bishop b5. Even in his game against Hans Niemann here from this tournament, Gukesh had played the Ruy Lopez, and it's the Berlin with knight f6, d3. The anti-Berlin is played and bishop to c5 played by Gukesh. He pushes his pawn to c3 so that knight d4 is not possible, and David quickly castles here. Taking a pawn in this manner is not a risky decision, is not safe, because of d5 coming in black is fine. So here Gukesh castles, pawn to d6 now, and rook e1, planning to play pawn to d4. He brings his knight back to e7 and pawn comes up to d4. David brings his bishop back. Now notice, if you take here, I have the move knight g4 attacking f2 and e5, and black is fine. So a4 played, pawn to c6, now attacking the bishop on b5. Bishop comes back to d3 and knight comes into g6. The pawn moves forward, pawn to h3 and rook e8, putting pressure on the e4 pawn. Gukesh brings his queen to c2. We have some positions that have reached this position. MVL Fressine being one. Bishop c7 is the main move here, but d5 is the first new move of the game, and it has never been played before. And look at Gukesh's quick response there. Bishop g5. He is at 1 hour 36 minutes, which means that he's super well prepared. 40 minutes ahead on the clock. Bishop e4. This pin is slightly irritating. E takes d4 played, and now just c takes d4. He takes back. So Gukesh has an isolated pawn, but look at his bishops and activity. h6 played. Attacking the bishop here. The bishop must take on f6. Queen takes f6, and Gukesh is at 136.53. And here, with some thought, he goes knight d2. Still maybe in his preparation, because the knight is very well placed here, going to the c4 square. Bishop comes out to d7. And now Gukesh plays pawn to a5. His first big thing of the game, 20 minutes. You may want to take this pawn, but then after bishop g6, you're losing material, as after takes, queen c4, you lose a piece. So it's not working out. He goes back, and now Gukesh goes a6. So clearly, white is on the offensive. White has play on the queen side, a6 is coming, the rook can enter in, pawn is hanging here, these could become weak. And also, not to forget, Gukesh has a solid time lead. B takes a6 played after 20 minutes. So Navara down to 31 minutes on the clock. Rook takes on a6. And bishop comes out to b6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. The knight comes out to c4. Now attacking the bishop on b6, also putting pressure here. And rook b8. I like white's chances here. but he takes on b6 directly. Another interesting idea was rook a3 and bringing the rook into the center. That would also have been very nice. But takes, pawn takes, and now rook a7. He attacks the bishop. Okay, if the bishop moves here, but where? If bishop e6, there's also bishop g6 takes and queen takes pawn. So you have to save the bishop. So rook d8 played. And how does Gukesh put pressure? More pressure. He goes rook d1, a move that he wouldn't make so happily because his rook was on an open file. But I think he didn't want these trades to happen here on e1. Rook e6 played by David. And now Gukesh has a chance to go knight e5. Played it. Beautiful. Knight comes to e5. Now if you take here, I take, and there's pressure here and you're losing material because queen e5, you have bishop f5. But bishop e8, a good move by David. Down to 5 minutes. Gukesh takes on g6. He's making all the best moves possible. F takes g6, queen to b3, pinning the rook, attacking the b6 pawn, and pawn to c5, lovely play. And now Gukesh has the only way to keep pressure, knight g4, attacking the queen. And he finds it, knight g4, excellent move, queen is attacked. If queen f7, the rook is controlling that square. So queen f5, only move to keep this rook guarded. Now knight e3, attacking the queen, and then d5. Pushing the rook, rook d6, blocking, and the d pawn is blocked. And he goes rook b7, attacking the pawn on b6. The bishop comes to a4, queen c3, threatening a mate. Can't take the rook here. Rook d7, offering a trade of rooks. I think you have to accept it. So take on d7, and David now takes back with the bishop. But Gukesh is better because he has a passer, his knight is well placed. He goes queen b3, trying to put pressure on b6. And b5 is an excellent move by David. He's playing on his last couple of minutes until move 40, but he's playing good chess. Queen a3, attacks the pawn on c5. Pawn to c4 played. Maybe instead of queen a3, he could have done d6 check or queen c3 back. But after queen a3, c4, d6, king h7, he goes queen a7. Gukesh is rushing in with his moves, but now this queen d4 move to keep the advantage. But instead he goes rook d4, a 38th move, down to his last 5 seconds. Pressure mounting. Pawn to c3. He takes, b takes c3. Queen takes c3. And rook comes back to d1. The queen comes back to c6. And both players have reached move 40 with additional time. And if you look at the resulting position, it still looks visually that white is better with this beautiful pawn on d6. But it is not to be, because somehow black is just so solid, blocking the pawn. Somehow if the knight could reach here on c5, it would have been amazing. Queen b4, Gukesh blocks the pawn. Rook goes to e8. And now rook to d4. Rook comes to a8. And you have the rook coming back. David goes back, trying to repeat the position. Queen comes into d2. And now rook e6 played. Gukesh is trying to go on this knight journey with knight b4. The queen comes in, looking for rook e2 and winning this material, but knight b4. Somehow Gukesh has been maneuvering, closer to that square. Rook e2 attacks the queen, that defends the knight. Queen d3. If queen takes b4, there's queen takes e2. Rook comes back. And knight to c2. He brings his rook to e2. The knight comes to b4. And he comes back, I guess, to e6. Will Gukesh repeat here? No, he takes the queen. He wants to keep the fight going always. That's how Gukesh is. But here, I believe that there is nothing much to play for knight a2. The knight is coming to c3 with f3 and knight e4. King goes back to g8. Knight comes to c3. King to f7. And pawn f3. He brings his king up. And now bishop to c6 played. The rook swings up, attacking the pawn on c4 and king d7. And the knight jumps in. He takes, and I think this is the final moment where the position is drawn. Okay, you can basically argue that white is a pawn up potentially because of, these pawns are going to get traded. Rook c4, you take on d6, and then he takes on c3, and then the e pawn is a passer. But still, I don't see it as a big thing. Takes. David can easily blockade here. He goes g5. King e3. King e6. And rook to c7. Putting pressure on the g7 pawn. Coming back, threatening e5 check. King e6. Rook comes to a5. And now rook b6 played. Check. The king comes up to g4. And rook b4 attacking the pawn. We have king h5. Takes on e4. And you want to capture this pawn, this pawn. So Gukesh's king is active, but Navara's rook is doing the trick here. He attacks the g2 pawn, and it's time to now play for a draw for both the players. Take on g2, take on h6, rook g3, and we have chop. Rook takes check, and the final trade with rook h5, and the game ends in a draw. I don't know what to say about this game. The players agreed to a draw. It felt to me that Gukesh played really well, but David Navara was so equal to the task. Gukesh's preparation was top notch. Middle game, he took his chances. Maybe there were some very minute little moves that he could have improved upon, but this just goes to show the level of chess at the top level. Even if you have the white pieces, great preparation, great position, you make the best moves, but if your opponent also is up to the task, then it's never easy to win. I think I would also call it the difficulty of being the world champion, because when you are the world champion, everyone's so motivated to play against you, and that really makes it difficult for you to win. I hope that Gukesh is able to win a few games here in the next rounds. Right now, he's on 1.5 out of 4 and a great draw for David Navara.